just going to wait and make sure. I'm just going to see if people are jumping on. Hey, Amanda, how you doing? Can you hear me? Hey, Christy. Hey, Marinda. Hi, girls. Hey, Kyra. Hey, Sabine. Awesome. Thanks, Christy. Okay, I'm going to get started. So, thanks for joining me tonight, girls. Awesome. Welcome to day one of Everyday Greatness. So, I actually put a poll up in my Everyday Greatness group, my beautiful ladies that, I've been on the socials with for a while now, and they voted for these top three topics. So, awesome, girls. I'm really excited to share this with you. Just for those who have joined this group really recently in order to access this challenge, just a very quick rundown of who I am. So my name is Natalie Jacoba Rosen. Jacoba's my middle name. I'm a mum. I have a 10-year-old boy, recently married for the second time, and I work full time in process improvement for a government organization, but I also run this business on the side, which I really, really love, and it's really about empowering women to live their best life. And I do that through goal setting and habit building in the areas of health and wealth. So we'll talk a little bit about that over the next couple of nights, and feel free to ask me any questions at any point. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I have actually gone to university and gotten a degree, and for a long time I really thought that that's what qualified me to be able to do things like this. But it's really, over the last few years, I've really come to realize that it's my experiences and the things that I have gone through and my story, essentially, which I think actually really does qualify me, or allow me this opportunity to share what I've learned with you. And so I just really want you girls to keep that in mind as well, that you don't have to run out and get yourself a degree and, spend tens of thousands of dollars on qualifying yourself to do something. Sometimes your story, or majority of the time, I would argue, your story is enough. And your experience is enough, and who you are is enough. So I just really encourage you to remember that as we move through the next few nights. So now, back. Sorry, ladies. So why are you here? And this is different for everybody, I suppose. Sorry, I'll just go back to this. Some people actually have specific goals in health, or in their career, or in travel or family. Some people just want to experience something differently. Some people do want really life long change. And, there are some people that are just really not sure what they want. But once again, I just really, I suppose, encourage you to think about your story and what that is for you, and the things that you've been through over the last, goodness knows how long, but 10, 20 years, whatever it's been. What have you been through, and how has that made you and shaped who you are today? And try to use that story where you can, to actually think about your values and purpose, which we're going to be talking about, especially tonight. And so tonight is Take Back Control, and it's about regaining control and influence to better manage your time. And managing your time isn't necessarily what you need to get better at, but we will talk about that in a minute. And by doing this, by regaining control and learning how to influence people around you and yourself a little bit better. You will learn how to say no, and you will be able to actually do a lot less people pleasing and actually serve genuinely from the heart. So, time. Let's start with time, ladies. And this is one thing in the world that doesn't discriminate. And that's pretty powerful, right? Because there are so many things in this world now that, um, that can be discriminative, race, sex, gender, everything. And, but ultimately, time is the same for everyone. We all have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's the one thing that we can all rely on. Managing your time actually comes down to how you value it, how you value your time. And it's really about asking the question, what value does what I'm about to do or is what I'm doing now have in my life? And do I choose to do this because it matters to me? Okay. I'm not too sure what your story is. For some people, it's about improving their health. For some people, you might be going through a really rough time, just being a parent, feeling the stress and the mental load of running a household. Maybe you want to rejoin the workforce. Maybe you want change. But whatever that is, I often feel like it can be like the hamster wheel of death. Like it's just so much to take on sometimes, and we're juggling so much. And we're trying to do it all at once. And really, it's not about us not being able to do it all. It's about us realizing that we may just not be able to do it all at the same time. And it's about prioritizing. But what I would suggest is that you start with understanding your values. And this is the resource that I gave you earlier today. And have a look at that when you can. It lists a whole different it's got a whole different list of values, and this will take a little bit of time. So I don't want you to feel like you've got to have your 6 to 10, possibly or hopefully 8 values listed by the end of tonight. It's actually going to take some time. It actually took me, the first time I did this, it took me a good probably 1 full month of going back and forth with my coach at the time. Make sure that you choose values that you really want to choose, not the ones you think you should choose. And so go back for 5 minutes every day, possibly over the next week, and just try to refine them as much as you can. To begin with, circle as many values as you can that resonate with you. And then just, I suppose, over the next few days or over the next few weeks, just try to eliminate the things and actually start to really dig into the ones that really mean something to you. And these don't have to be values that you are right now. They can actually be values that you want to be as well, that you want for your future. Also keep in mind that your values aren't tied to you forever. Your values do change. We really do. And so this is something that I would really recommend you revisit over time. Don't feel like once you've chosen your 8 values or your 6 values, whatever it might be, that you're stuck with these values for life. Like it really is something that you should be revisiting. I would recommend at least once a year. But what these values are going to do is they're actually going to set up for you boundaries, because you're going to start to actually realize what it is you're about and what it is you will stand for and what it is you won't stand for. Okay? So take your time with listing these values. Don't feel like it's all going to come to you very quickly. And I suppose try to revisit them at least once every couple of days, just so that you're not leaving so much time in between that you're actually really forgetting about where you're at and losing that motivation to keep going. So I'm just going to go through a few things here that I think we as women tend to do around our time and the value that we place on our time, and maybe some of the things that we do that are not such good efficient uses of our time. And the first one is our competing priorities. And by all means, I'm not saying here that our work and our kids and our house and our families and our friends are not priority. Of course they are. But what I want you to start to ask yourself is, what value do they have in my life? And where does that link to the values that are for me? Okay. Um, if, for example, say your kids, okay, and maybe you're spending a couple of hours after school each day doing after school sports with the kids, and that's actually not a bad thing, but it's about thinking about the values that you've listed for yourself, that you're defining for yourself over the next few weeks, and how they link to what it is you're doing with your kids. Maybe one of your values is your family. And so that's a direct link between how you're spending your time and the values that you have. Maybe one of your values is love and connection. And so that that links straight away to your kids and your family and doing what it is you feel you need to do for your family. Okay, so I'm not saying here that we can't have competing priorities, but I suppose what I'm saying is that it's really good to look at them from a different perspective. That in fact we do these things and we have these competing priorities because they actually align with our values. It also gives us a bit of a chance to actually look at maybe some of the competing priorities that we do have in our life that really don't align with any of our values. And it really becomes evident to us that we really don't know why we're doing this. We really don't see any value in this. So, once again, this exercise can take a little bit of time, but I really, I suppose, encourage you to, over the next couple of weeks, as you're doing things that you would normally see as a competing priority, that you ask yourself, what value does this have in my life? What is the outcome I'm looking for? What is the consequence I'm looking for? The other one is comparison. Oh my goodness, I harp on about this all the time. I love social media, so it's really for me not about not liking social media at all. Um, it's really about how we value it and what we're doing to ourselves whilst we're on it. And so, what I would suggest here is once again, when you're on social media, when you're comparing yourself to maybe someone on TV or you're reading through magazines, however it is that comparison looks to you, um, think about what value does this have in my life for me right now? Is it detrimental to me and is it actually affecting my mental health? Or is it actually inspiring and motivating me? And so, what I would say here is really fill your feed with what feeds you. And this doesn't have to be just your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, okay? This can also be what you're watching on Netflix. This could also be, what you're watching on TV. And that's not to say that I don't love these things myself either. And there are times in my life where I will put on Netflix and I will watch something so trashy, but at that point in time, the value to me is that I just need to switch off and just relax. And that's actually totally okay. It's just recognizing how much time you're putting into these things and how they're feeding you, and just being a little bit more aware of that. And you will find that over time, as you come to see what it is you really value in your life, you'll start to put boundaries in place around what you will look at and what you will compare yourself to. And ultimately, I really want to stress as well, girls, that when we're comparing ourselves to another mother, to someone on Instagram, to someone on TV, the evidence actually suggests that we're comparing ourselves to less than 2% of that person's life. Like that's not a lot of that's not giving us a lot of weight around that whole apple for apple, right? I mean, that's if we're comparing ourselves to less than 2% of someone else's life, I mean, that's just insane. So just keep that in mind as well when you kind of get caught in that whole comparing yourself to someone else and thinking about how it is your life fares up against another person's. And yeah, really try to use the social media that we do have for your own good and use it to share your good. And, that's not to say that social media is going to be perfect all the time. It totally is not. But we actually do have full control of what it is we want to look at and what it is we want to absorb. So really take control of that and think about that. The people pleasing train. Who wants to get on a train that's taking you somewhere you don't want to be? No one, right? I don't want to get on a train that's taking me somewhere I don't want to be. So why do we do this to ourselves? We get ourselves on these trains and we head into disaster zone. When we start going down someone else's route, someone else's journey, something that was for someone else that wasn't meant for us. One of the things that I find that's really helpful with the people pleasing and spending our time pleasing others is looking at it from a bit of a different perspective. Now, I'm not saying this in a condescending or awful way, but what I've come to realize, and this is coming from me, who I always say to people, I am a people pleaser in rehab. Like, I have done so much work on my people pleasing because I was such a people pleaser that I actually sometimes used to make myself physically sick. Like, it was really bad. Um, and so I'm really coming out of that now, and so I'm saying this from experience. People pleasing can actually be an egotistical, selfish thing. And that's not to say that you are selfish. It's to say that sometimes when we're people pleasing, we're expecting something in return, and usually it's to feed our own ego. We don't want to say no to someone because we want them to validate our worth, right? So, one of the things that I have found really, really helpful is when someone asks me to do something or be somewhere or, you know, help them with something or invites me to something that maybe I don't necessarily want to go to, I always ask myself, am I expecting anything in return? Because there is such a big difference between expecting something in return and doing it from a level of, I want my ego fed, I need to be pat on the back for this, and actually doing something for someone and serving from the heart and being completely genuine and doing it unconditionally. Okay, so look, people pleasing, it can be a little bit different for everyone. That's my experience, and that's been my experience with my clients as well, that they have found that when they think about it, that's where it's coming from. So, ladies, keep your egos in check a little bit. You don't need someone else to validate your worth. You are worthy. You really are. You're worthy. And so I'm just going to now, towards the end, really just talk about the control that you have in your life. And this is something called Locus of Control, which actually they do a lot in the corporate world around people leadership and helping people through times of stress. And you can actually use the Locus of Control to list your stresses and your worries and help you to determine where they sit. But what I'm going to actually use it for tonight is to talk about what it is you want to change in your life. And so what I would urge you to do over the next couple of days, over the next 24 hours if possible, is actually list 3 changes, no more than 3. So even if it's just one change, 1 to 3 changes in your life that you want to make. And then I want you to think about where they sit on that locus, so that line that you can see in front of you. Is it something that you have full control over, or is it something that you have no control over? Or is it something that sits in the middle where you don't have full control, but you do have some influence, right? So for instance, if you have a work performance one-on-one coming up with your boss, right? You actually don't have full control over what they're going to say, how they're going to respond to you, what their thought process is. But you have influence. So you can do the best that you can do performance-wise. You have influence over that. You have control over that. But ultimately, in that particular setting, in that one-on-one, you don't have control over someone else's response, right? So that's an example of something that maybe you have a little bit of influence over. Something that you've got absolutely no control over is, well, actually, it's someone else's thought process and opinion. We just don't have control over other people. And so everything that we list in the external part of your locus of control, that's something you actually have to surrender. And that's where it gets really tricky. And it takes time. Once again, the things that you learn, the things that you list under your locus of control that are sitting in the external end where they're not something that you can have control over, that is something you have to surrender and that you have to let go of. When you do your list, when you look at the 3 changes that you want to make in your life, think about the parts of them that you can control. What is the action that you can take right now that you have control over? Right? So say your goal is to maybe to lose weight, okay? You want to perhaps go, you've got a couple of things you could do. You can plan your diet and prep some meals for yourself, and that's within your control, right? That is something that you can do. You're not relying on anyone else to do it. You've got the resources you need. You can plan your meals the week ahead, and you can get it done. You can do it all on a Sunday, and you can smash out all those meals, and you know that you've got them sitting there in the fridge. Something that you can't control is you have a gym class scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning, and you run into traffic, and you don't make it. That is not necessarily in your control. And sometimes when these things happen to us, when something comes up in life that we weren't planning for, it can really throw us off kilter, and it can really throw our day out. And then we start to go into this whole, oh, if only I had, or oh gosh, I wish I could have, or, why is life doing this to me? Why is this happening to me? But what we need to think about is what it is we can control. What can we do in that situation? We can't do a lot, but there are certain things we could do. We could turn around and go home and go for a walk. Sometimes when I get stuck in traffic now, and oh my gosh, I suppose I'm using this because from my own experience, I am terrible in traffic. I have really bad road rage, actually. I really need to work on that. That's probably one change in my life that I need to work on, okay? But what I have found really helpful is that now when I get stuck in traffic and I'm meant to be somewhere and that's not in my control, I listen to a podcast that I've been meaning to listen to for a really long time. And that podcast is feeding me in some other way. Usually the podcasts I listen to are kind of podcasts that are helping me in my business. I also have a business coach. So, sometimes in traffic, if I'm stuck there and I've got nothing else to do, I'll listen to one of her webinars and I'm feeding myself with something. So I'm taking back control of something that I do have control over. Okay. There's a lot to learn about locus of control. And if you have any questions, let me know. But we are going to talk a little bit too tomorrow night as well about setting those intentions and habits and rethinking about the things that we can do and how we can actually turn our day around. So recapping tonight, ladies, prioritize your values. What are your values? Yep. Don't worry if you don't have 8 by the end of tonight or even by the end of this week. Like I said at the beginning, it can take time. Over the next couple of days, even especially over the next day, ask yourself, what value does this have in my life when you're doing something? Yep. Even when you're about to order some food and you're not sure about what you're going to order, because this is my problem. I don't know about you guys, but I have a real self-control issue. And I have found this so helpful when it comes to food. Asking myself, what value does this have in my life? And it sounds really ridiculous, but it is so good to do when you're about to put food in your mouth, because it really does actually make you stop and think about what you're about to eat and what you're about to nourish your body with. And it's not to say that that doesn't mean you can't eat bad food every now and then. There are some times where I have pancakes in front of me and I'll ask myself this question and I'll be like, the value that it has in my life right now is I need to just relax and enjoy my food. And I'm really excited to eat this. And that's the value. So don't get too caught up in it. Like I said, it's just really important that you become aware of where you're placing your value, especially in how you're spending your time. And your locus of control. So really think about your 1 to 3 changes. Like I said, do not go beyond 3. And think about what can be actioned in the next 24 hours once you've written them down. So once you have a change that you have complete control over, what action can you take straight away to make that happen? Is it a phone call that you need to make? Is it a quick shop down to the grocery store? Is it something you've been meaning to watch? Is it something you've been meaning to read? Whatever it is you need to do, take action straight away. Don't hesitate and don't wait for perfection. Take action. All right, girls. So, thanks for joining me tonight. And does anyone have any questions before I end this live? Anything at all? Hey, Amanda. So good to hear from you. Awesome, girls. Just gonna scroll down here. Hey, Adele. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Mel. Hey, Kylie. It's so good to hear you. Sorry, hear you. I can't hear you. So good to see you here. Hey, Jane. Catherine, I have 10 values. Is that okay? Yeah, it is. It is. Look, I wouldn't go beyond 10. I usually tell people not to go beyond 10. I find that because, and this is something I do with my clients, over time. And this is something you could do as well over the next couple of weeks. But it's really good to have just enough values that you can actually know them off by heart. Because the next step in the process is to actually start telling yourself your values every single day. Yeah. One of the things that I do is once I have my values each year, once I've revisited my values and I know what my values are, I stick post-it notes up in my wardrobe with my values written on them, just as a reminder every day when I'm getting dressed. I'm like, yeah, these are what my values are. These are what my boundaries are. This is what I'm going to say yes to. And this is what I'm going to say no to because they don't align with my values. So once you've started to get your head around what your values are, it's really handy to be able to just know them off by heart. And I think if you've got more than 10, it just gets maybe just that little bit too hard and you start to, I suppose, confuse yourself. And I suppose the thing to remember too is that once you've got your list, it doesn't mean that you have no other values. Like that's totally not the gist. Like I'm sure if I looked at that list, I've probably got 20 more than I've listed. But it's really just identifying the real top ones, yeah, and really thinking about those top values. And it's really going to then help you define, especially with the people pleasing and the comparison, what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. It really does change the game because after a while, once you start to understand what your values are, you're not going to feel guilty saying no to someone. You're actually not, because you'll have trained your mind to think, okay, well, if this is not going to get me heading towards my values and it doesn't have any value in my life, then I'm going to say no. And you're not actually going to feel as guilty as what you possibly do now because you've actually identified that for yourself. It makes such a huge impact when we actually identify for ourselves what our values are and we've written them down. Makes a huge difference. And that's not to say that you'll never feel guilty. It just takes a huge load off. So yeah, good question, Catherine. Yeah, Amanda, the post-it note idea has been awesome for me. And even just like on bathroom mirrors and stuff, especially the top 4, and because they do change over time. So yeah, it's good just to switch them about and just remember them, and it just helps you as you're going along in your day going, oh yeah, I remember that. Like I had integrity, especially integrity for me is one of my values. And so when I'm at work and there's something that's really testing my integrity and I remember that that's my value, it's a lot easier for me to be honest with myself and honest with others. So yeah, it's really cool. Awesome, girls. Thank you. All right, so I don't think it doesn't look like there's any more questions. But obviously post them in the group. You're all there. You're all amazing. You're all worthy. And I will be seeing you tomorrow night. So, tomorrow night is all about building your habits and supercharging your day. And I'm actually going to go through the focus planner that you've probably all downloaded by now. Just because I feel like it's about time I actually show you guys how to use that focus planner and like really give it some meaning to you guys and really make it come alive for you so that you can actually really start to use it. And hopefully, I'll be able to publish the hard copy and give you all a hard copy. So that would be amazing. All right, ladies, I'm going to let you go. It's getting a bit late. It's a school night. I hope you all had an amazing weekend, and I will see you all soon. Bye.